Hello, I'm Simon Adebisi and welcome to highlights of the 2012 Formula SimRacing World Championship. The teams now travel to Malaysia for round 2 of the championship, the first circuit entirely designed by Herman Tilke. This track features multiple high-speed corners and is known for producing extremely high lateral G-forces. With 2 very long straights, proper wing setup is crucial for the teams to get right in order to ensure high downforce through the corners, but also a high top speed. Qualifying saw Frenchman Morgan Moran take his second consecutive pole, making it 2 from 2 in the 2012 season. He edged out defending champion Bono Huis for the top spot by just over 1/10 of a second. But the big surprise was Go Speed's Jim Paresis, who managed to set the 3rd fastest time, beating veteran Twister Racing driver Fredrik Nilsson. Rasmus Tali qualified in an impressive 5th place for GT Amiga Racing, and Patrick de Wit was very pleased to put his MacCore car into 6th on the grid. Yannick Lapchan would start in 7th, making it a strong result for ATR management. Renaud Room set the 8th fastest time for RS Evo, ahead of Gergo Baldi for Netrex Grand Prix, and David Greco would start in 10th place. Outside the top 10, Jean-Eric Saxon just missed out on Q2. Dejan Kostatinov would start in 12th, and Twister reserve driver Peter Burlak just edged out WC debutant Giuseppe Raineri for 13th place. Another disappointing session for Mikko Puumalainen put the Finn down in 15th, ahead of Martin Gosby in 16th position. To the race start and off the line, Huis appeared to get a better launch and Moran immediately moved over to defend his position. Sitting in Moran's draft, Huis used all the tow before pulling over to the outside to get alongside Moran. Paresis lost 2 positions and de Wit snuck up the inside into 4th. Meanwhile, Huis switched back to the outside for turn 2 and made it around Moran into 1st position. Further behind, Raineri tripped on the curb, costing Greco his front wing and causing significant damage to Puumalainen. Disley and Masculi also collided, and Giuseppe Marconi stalled after battling Varga into turn 1. Down into turn 4, Huis was forced to take the defensive line and Moran cruised around the defending champion, crucially retaking his top spot. Rasmus Tali was quickly on the attack against Jim Paresis, and into the final turn, Tali ultimately prevailed on the inside. It was almost immediately apparent that both Morgan Moran and Bono Huis were in a league of their own. Moran was holding off Huis in his dirty air, and Fredrik Nilsson was unable to keep in contact with the leading duo. Just behind, Patrick de Wit was unable to keep up with Nilsson, and soon Rasmus Tali was bearing down on the Dutchman before making an easy pass up the inside to take over 4th place. Jim Paresis quickly latched onto the back of de Wit, but otherwise it was a bad day for Greek fans, with Chatsi Bantella spinning to the back of the field and Manuzakis ending his race after planting the power down too quickly out of the penultimate turn. Van der Linden was also caught out by the tricky Sepang circuit, dropping his car through turn 11 and crunching his front end. In the midfield train, a slight mistake from Martin Gosby shuffled up the order, damaging Burlak's car and advancing Kostatinov and Puumalainen into the top 12. And in the battle for 8th, Yannick Lapchan eventually managed to overcome Gergo Baldi with a classy outside pass around turn 4. Further ahead, Jim Paresis got alongside Patrick de Wit into the opening corner and took over 5th position. However, de Wit quickly hit back, with the MacCore driver retaking his place on the very next corner. Renaud Room then made an attempt on Paresis on the following lap, but an ever-watchful Yannick Lapchan took full advantage of the situation, passing both cars and getting alongside Paresis. Travelling side by side, the pair went through turn 5, with Lapchan ultimately getting out in front, moving up into 6th place. Into the pits for the first of 3 stops, Morgan Moran had a 1-second lead over Bono Huis, but unfortunately Moran's pit crew made a slow stop, and the Frenchman helplessly lost the position to his Dutch rival. Tragically, Patrick de Wit accidentally double-tapped his pit limiter, causing him to breach the speed limit, handing him a 10-second stop-go penalty. Meanwhile, Renaud Room made it past Paresis on his second attempt, and just behind, Dejan Kostatinov made 2 passes in 1 lap, first disposing of Jean-Eric Saxon, and then Jim Paresis half a lap later for a virtual 8th position. On lap 14, the pit lane became heavily congested with traffic, and there were several key position changes. The GT Amiga Racing team managed to get Kostatinov in and out fast enough to leap both Lapchan and Room, and Jean-Eric Saxon stalled his car in the pits, and although he got his engine started again, he'd lost valuable time. Meanwhile, Gergo Baldi's earlier stop leaped the Hungarian back ahead of position for what was now 5th place, and Martin Gosby's race came to a frustrating end when the Briton slipped through the final turn and stalled his engine on the sideline. With Bono Huis now back in the lead of the Grand Prix, the Precision Motorsports driver tried to get away from Morgan Morand, but he was unable to increase the gap any further. Twister Racing's Fredrik Nilsson remained in a lonely third place ahead of Estonian Rasmus Tali in fourth, who also found himself alone on the track. In the midfield, there was a large amount of overtaking as some drivers apparently struggled on the heavy fuel loads. Lapchan dropped back while Jim Parisas retook his place from Renault Room. Gogo Baldi was passed first by Kostatinov through turn 4, and then after a mistake through the double apex corner, Parisas also passed the Netrex Grand Prix car. Parisas was now back into 6th, and Dejan Kostatinov was now up into an incredible 5th position, despite being way down in 13th during his first stint. Mikko Pumalainen was holding on to 10th, just ahead of Peter Burlack, and Jean-Eric Saxon was just behind in 12th. The second set of stops again hurt Morgan Morand, with Bono Huis slightly extending his lead, making it look more and more likely that the Dutch teenager would take the race win. Rasmus Tali's second stop nearly ended in disaster, with the Estonian forgetting about his cold brakes and he collided heavily with Pumalainen. Fortunately, no wings were lost, and despite even more damage to Pumalainen's car, both drivers were able to continue. Meanwhile, Kostatinov and Parisas battled it out over 5th place, with a few side-by-side moments. However, the Greek driver could not find his way through, until the Go Speed crew managed to leap him ahead of Kostatinov with a fast stop, returning Parisas into 5th place. Further behind, Lapchan finally managed to get past Baldi for 8th, albeit with a very aggressive pass. For the third set of stops, Lapchan's strategy of pitting late paid off. The Frenchman just came out in front of Kostatinov, with the pair going through the entire first corner complex side by side before Lapchan ultimately prevailed through turn 4. Jean-Eric Saxon gained a position, with a quick stop getting the Finn alongside Peter Burlack in pit lane, forcing the Croatian to yield and advancing Saxon into 11th. Renault Room had a big spin on his in-lap, costing the RS Evo driver 3 places, dropping him down into 10th place. Soldiering on with a heavily damaged car, Mikko Pumalainen pushed hard and eventually caught and passed Gergo Baldi for 8th place. The Netrex driver came back at the Finn on the following lap, but Pumalainen managed to defend his position. In the fight for the race lead, Morgan Morand had crucially pitted 2 laps later than Bono Huis, giving the ATR driver slightly fresher tyres. Closing in on Huis in the final stages, it began to look like Morand actually had a chance, with the cars being separated by just half a second with 8 laps still to go. However, in his typical style, Bono Huis remained calm under pressure, making no mistakes and allowing Morand no opportunity to attempt a pass. Starting the final lap, Morand was closer than ever, and despite being 2 car lengths behind, the ATR driver made a desperate passing attempt, resulting in contact between the 2 cars. Huis quickly switched back to the inside in first position, but he would have to defend one more time. Using the draft, Morand took the outside line for turn 4, but Huis proved to be too strong under braking, and the Dutchman would maintain his lead all the way to the checkered flag. Taking career victory number 24, Bono Huis won the Malaysian Grand Prix for the 2nd year running, proving once again his grace under pressure. Morgan Morand finished in 2nd place, apologising for the final lap contact after the race, and Fredrik Nilsson finished a very lonely and uneventful race in a nonetheless very impressive 3rd place. Rasmus Tali also experienced a very quiet race, finishing in 4th position. Jim Parisas achieved his best ever result in a WC event and the best result for Go Speed since 2010. Yannick Lapchan used a strong strategy to help him get up into 6th, and Dejan Kostatinov finished a highly eventful race in 7th position. Mikko Pumalainen finished another difficult Grand Prix in 8th, Gergo Baldi crossed the line in 9th, and Renault Room picked up the final point in 10th position. Following the race, Mikko Pumalainen made the shock announcement that he wished to take an indefinite hiatus from racing in FSR, citing that he needs a break after 70 consecutive race starts. Morand and Huis are now equal on points, with both drivers taking 1 win and 1 second place. Fredrik Nilsson moves up into 3rd on the table, just ahead of Rasmus Tali. With neither Van Dorn nor Malorqui competing today and Greco DNFing, Jim Parisas now moves into equal 7th position. Yannick Lapchan is now in 9th, and Kostatinov is in 10th, tied with Mikko Pumalainen. ATR management do have the lead in the constructors though, albeit by only 2 points from Precision Motorsports. Twister Racing are not far behind, and GT Omega Racing have shown very impressive results so far, gaining 4th position. AT Racing, Matcore and Silverline all failed to score today, and Go Speed Racing's 10 points moves the Portuguese outfit into 7th place. Both Netrex Grand Prix and RS Evo picked up their first points of the season, placing them in 9th and 10th respectively. The next race will be the Chinese Grand Prix, and you can watch that race live as it happens. Simply go to www.simrace.tv on the 6th of May at 4 PM GMT. And don't forget to check out Formula Sim Racing on both Facebook and on Twitter. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I'm Simon Adebisi, and we'll see you next time for round 3 of the 2012 Formula Sim Racing World Championship.